Perfect. Well, Max, thanks for the wonderful introduction. Again, my name is Forrest Senti. I work at the National Cybersecurity Center. Myself and my colleague here, Binil, we're going to be talking about moving small businesses to the cloud and give you a little information on what you need to know and talk about some of the work behind the scenes that we've been doing to make this a little easier as well. In terms of a general flow for today, you'll kind of hear me talk about a few things to introduce the topic, and then I'll pass it over to Binil, and then it'll come back to me and we'll talk a little more about kind of what we're doing in the cloud space, and then answer all the questions at the end. So first and foremost, I want to thank the SANS Institute and the Cyber Readiness Institute for having us here today. So we'll just go ahead and jump right in. For a quick background, just so people can understand kind of a little bit of the history of where I work at the NCC and some of our work. Really our big focus, our mission is about building a collaborative, operational, and interdisciplinary model for cybersecurity engagement that transforms our nation's ability to detect and deter threats. We execute a lot of this by working in workforce across the country, and specifically in K-12. We also do a lot of work in state level government, and we also manage one of the ISACs in the country called the Space Information Sharing and Analysis Center. And we also get to work with a lot of great people across the country, and small business security is one of those areas that we get to work with. So that's just helpful for context. I always like to touch on it so that we kind of get a little understanding. But to kind of jump in, why should we talk about moving to the cloud now? Now, if anybody's been paying attention for the past few years, we know that cybersecurity is a growing problem. It's exponentially getting harder, and it's happening more businesses that they're having these risks that are happening. So one of the big ones I want to call attention to happened 2 years ago, which is specific to the Microsoft Exchange, the on-prem hack that Hafnium had. This is a quote from Tom Burt, one of the Microsoft vice presidents, kind of talking a little bit about what happened in this hack. And I will quite literally read it because I think it's touching and it's telling, and it really explains why now is such a good time to be thinking about this kind of movement towards the cloud. With this hack in particular, it would gain access to an Exchange server either with stolen passwords or by using a vulnerability, and it would disguise itself as someone who had access. Second, they literally used a web shell to control that compromised server remotely. And third, it would then use that remote access to run from that US-based private servers, all about stealing data from the organization's network. And the reason why I bring this up is because this affected more than 60,000 businesses nationwide. And with the movement where people are now slowly moving away from on-prem towards cloud, last year, I think roughly a little over 20% of businesses still used on-premise applications, to run their Exchange servers specifically, or other applications. But the reality is that there's a lot of issues with this. The way that this can affect you is that you can have an increased vulnerability. Small businesses that use some of these things were exposed to unauthorized access. And the reality is that patch management, some of these things, is really difficult for a small business to maintain, let alone the cost of having something like an IT director or an MSP. The reality is that it's just difficult. The other thing too is whenever these attacks are successful, operational disruption is a big deal. Literally, this can hinder normal business activity, and a vast majority of businesses who suffer any of these types of cyber attacks in the first few years of their business, almost 60 to 70% of them end up failing. So it's very, very important that people take this seriously from the beginning, and you really think about it, because you can literally lose your business over a single hack just because of the reputation or the disruption to your business. The next two I'll talk about briefly are things like data breach risk. Several states across the US are now creating penalties for some of these data breaches if they involve a certain amount of customers. And beyond that, you take a hit to your reputation. And I already touched on this briefly, but the idea of limited resources is really important. A lot of businesses, especially if the under 50 employee crowd, limited IT staff, limited resources. I mean, you're talking about making a decision between an advertising campaign and investing into your IT infrastructure. And that's a really, really difficult conundrum to have to think through. So it's really important now when we start talking about the cloud and why the movement in that direction is so important, is because when you think about all these considerations and why, moving into that environment where you can kind of have a hardened cloud environment, it's really important. And that's why, really the benefits of switching now can be so beneficial. To start with, Binil and I are security experts where we've been in this world for several years. So enhanced security is always a big deal. When the SMEs can protect things like your employees, your clients, your businesses through these security hardened cloud environments that we'll mention, it makes a big deal. And in terms of resource limitations, I mean, you really get access to these robust security measures without the need for dedicated teams or costly consultants. It's a big deal because when you can when you can do these things in yourself and you can kind of invest in yourself while creating more security, it helps you. Not to mention it's cost effective. Oftentimes these hardened cloud offerings can be reliable and then very affordable. I mean, you're talking about paying for a monthly subscription cost of a little bit of cloud usage. That's a far cry to having to maintain your bare metal solutions and your servers on rack in your building, let alone having the space and the cooling and the utilities. We all know that's getting more expensive. But you can spend more money on other things, which is exciting. Beyond that, things like being able to measure your security level. You'll hear me talk a little bit later on CMMC and why that's relevant for the conversation. But you can actually have better compliance standards and measure where you're at in real time through scenarios like this, let alone if you're in an industry where you have high compliance requirements, things like HIPAA or like in the DoD with 800 and 171. I mean, there's a lot of different ways for you to manage your compliance here. And bottom line for everybody here, I mean, it really is just the accessibility and the rapid improvement. You want to make a significant improvement today, using things like automated security elements really allows you to rapidly enhance your security environment. So that's the big piece I wanted to mention here. So I want to go ahead and pass it over to my colleague, Binil. Binil, are you able to have control or do you want me to advance the slides for you?
Sounds good. Thanks. Awesome. So yeah, just on this slide, before I talk about the CMMC, I wanted to set the context why it is important from a industry and Microsoft perspective, right? In the US, we have nearly 32 million small businesses, which account for 99% of all US businesses. So in the small and medium driven business world, things are rapidly changing due to the urgency in digital transformation enabled by cloud services. And what I see today, it's a hybrid and remote world where their workers are increasingly distributed, able to work on more flexible schedules in a variety of places with increased mobility and across more and more devices that might be company provided and personal devices. All this newfound freedom from a hybrid and cloud motion is refreshing. At the same time, it's a great for the workforce, but this distributed landscape can also pose security challenges. So let me call out a couple of statistics. Overall, ransomware attacks have been up almost 300% in the past years, with over 50% targeting small businesses. The economic cost of these attacks for small and medium business can be catastrophic. With over 60% of small businesses are not being able to operate after they have experienced a cyber attack. And this is the painful reality that we live in today, unfortunately. And this is where Microsoft as a company, together with our partner ecosystem, want to reach out to the SMB customers, engage them moving to the cloud, and accelerate their cloud transformation journey. Forrest, if we can move on to the next slide, please. Thank you. So we understand our secure future requires an end-to-end approach with technology and people empowered to defend with resilience. And this is where and why security is built into everything we design, develop, and deliver. As security leaders and practitioners, we understand security's job is never done. A constant vigilance is always vital. This is why Microsoft invests heavily in internal security research. So just to give you a perspective, at Microsoft, we spend over $1 billion every year on research and development to secure customer organization and enable them to digitally transform without compromising productivity. And we do this through our operations, technology, and partnerships. Next slide, please. Yeah, so let's share some of the statistics, all in billions. We could do all this because protections built into Windows, Azure, M365 that we call Microsoft 365, and Defender solution, which block more than 9.6 billion malware and 25 billion attempted stolen password hijacks. So technically speaking, approximately 800 password attacks per second, that's what we're trying to say for our customer. We have more than 8,500 security experts constantly focusing on discovery, understanding attack trends, and addressing patterns of security issues. Our world-class security research and threat intelligence help protect customers and Microsoft, as well as our open source software and other industry partners alike. So it's kind of a community across all the verticals as well as organization, how we can come up with a cohesive approach. Next slide, please. And this is where the importance of CMMC comes into the picture as a national security defense. As part of its focus on security and resiliency of the defense industrial based sector, the DoD is working with the contractors to enhance the protection of control unclassified information within the supply chain and ensure contractors can manage it safely. And there are approximately 300,000 organizations impacted by the CMMC guidelines. And most of them are small, medium business customers. I would say that approximately 80% of that. And currently, commercial clouds environment from Microsoft support FCI plus CMMC 2.0 level 0.1 data protection requirements. For CMMC 2.0 level 2 and 3, customers needs to choose GCC High for their overall compliance strategy. GCC High, just for information, sits in our sovereign cloud environment. However, for small, medium businesses, including suppliers, I mean those mom and pop shops that fulfill DoD tenders alongside other facets of their business, for them, GCC High can be a massive investment. Here is where Microsoft and our cloud service providers, together with the National Cybersecurity Center, can help migrating customer from Exchange on-prem servers to cloud and leverage our SMB business productivity and security solution we call Microsoft 365 Business Premium. And small businesses can leverage this solution on our commercial cloud environment, and this solution helps SMB customers achieve their CMMC 2.0 level 1 certification goals. So it is our responsibility to educate the SMB customer about the solution so that they can make the right decision towards achieving their CMMC compliance goal, whether it is strengthen their cybersecurity baseline or streamlining compliance. Through our partner ecosystem, we are looking forward to working with the National Cybersecurity Center to move SMBs in the DIB space to the cloud and thus accelerate their digital transformation journey. I am super excited with this responsibility of our engagement going forward. And thank you, SAN Small Business Cyber Summit, for having here. Over to you, Forrest.
Thanks, Binil. So I already saw one question come through on this, specifically asking about the CMMC. Now, I know a lot of the small businesses here, and Binil, again, thank you for an amazing presentation. That was great. One of the big things I want to highlight real quick, and I actually have a slide here, so this is perfect. I want to take a moment before I go into the next piece of this to talk about what CMMC is. And the reason why this is important is that, I already saw one question come through asking, what is CMMC? And the reason why I bring this up is because this is one of the first times that the Department of Defense is actually looking at doing a universal standard to kind of help level set where people need to be in terms of their security. Now, I assume a small percentage of you actually do work with the Department of Defense. That's a stat that I'm not privy to, but I assume it's 10 to 20% maybe. But the important thing for the other 80% is that doesn't every small business want to know that when they tell their customers they're using defense level cybersecurity, that's an important term for them to use? Everybody kind of instinctively grabs that and says, yeah, okay, I assume the Department of Defense is doing a good job. And if you're kind of managing your security at that level, that's a good thing. So that's really what CMMC is. And so what I'm about to talk about, and the reason why this is so important, is that this is a good universal standard to look at. And it's something that's evolving, it's growing, it's changing. And for the average security, expert and consultant, this is something where it kind of can create a universal baseline for people to look at. So again, CMMC is literally a framework developed by the Department of Defense. It has not been 100% finished yet. We're on version 2.0 right now. But what it's all about is maintaining a minimum level of cybersecurity hygiene for organizations. It really is focused across multiple levels of certification. And its goal is to protect sensitive data, have proper security controls, and mitigate cyber threats. It also gives you a clear roadmap. So if you look at the bottom right there, and you kind of have that level 1 foundational where you have 17 practices, 14 of those 17 practices specifically have to do with your cloud environment. And it's a self-attestation process for you to be able to do that. The other 3 have to do with physical controls, things like managing visitors in your building, logged access in and outside of your building, things like cameras and maintaining control over your environment, your physical environment. So it's important. So if you have a moment, feel free to look it up if you've ever considered doing work with the federal government, because this is going to be the standard. And you're going to see this type of standard feed down into state and local governments as well, even into other environments across the US. There was talk early on when this first came out of this being replicated across different areas for certification. So when we talk CMMC, that's what we're talking about, is basically this level of certification. So with that, one of the questions that I saw earlier that I want to highlight as well is this idea of, the transition from on-prem to cloud. For many organizations, this gives people a lot of headache, gives people a lot of pause. It's something that is not something to be taken lightly. But what if there was an easy solution? And what if there was literally a way for you to take that information, click into a new subscription, and those controls are locked down and give you a better roadmap for security? Well, that's really what we've been working on directly with Microsoft and a few other partners like the National Cybersecurity Alliance, and my wonderful board member at the NCC, Karen Evans, who's the former CIO for Department of Homeland Security. I believe she's keynoting today, so you'll hear more from her later. But what we really want to do is work with companies like Microsoft to enable rapid and cost-effective automation to get those controls to match CMMC level 1 that you can, be in the cloud. When we leverage the economies of scale of the cloud, organizations can literally enhance their security by choosing these secure configurations. Would you want to personally go through and click your configurations as a small business owner, or click a subscription and it tells you that you match 14 of 17 controls that the Department of Defense wants for its level 1 contractors? That's a powerful statement. Beyond that, the Hardened Cloud project takes this a little further, because the reality is that with partners that we've identified, we can literally create a complete computing environment to be able to house that information in this partnership. Because the whole idea is that we want it to be comprehensive security. We want this to be less about I am compliant and more about creating a culture of positive forward-leaning security. Because when it comes to security, we all have to be a part of it. Things like multi-factor authentication, employee training, password management, maintaining control of your data, all those things are critical in this pathway for becoming a cyber secure small business. And that's really what we're focused on. That's really the entire goal of doing all of these things. So with that in mind, these are just some more details for you to expect in terms of how this is all going to work. In terms of the specifications for this hardened cloud, it's really about identifying the automated elements of CMMC level 1. It's all about creating specification, detailing those capabilities, and continuous validation. One of our goals is to be able to pull a report in real time and show that you're still doing these things like enabling MFA, things like watching your external connections to other organizations and making sure people just can't share files willy-nilly. And also working with top experts to make sure that it's credible and valid, so we have assurance that our security is there. When we talk about some of the cloud vendors we're looking at, obviously Microsoft, but broadly speaking, we have to be able to test the feasibility of this program. So right now we're recruiting partners to be able to look at those cloud service providers that kind of are the Microsoft partners so we can execute this. So we have a few calls in, and you'll expect more to come out about that. But one of the fun things here is that we do expect a high level of demand for this once the word gets out. This is quite literally one of the first times people are hearing about this, because the whole goal here is that we want to have a small test audience that can use this and give us feedback in terms of people who want to not only get off on-prem kind of exchange server type stuff and moving to the cloud, but also people who mentally want to increase their security and get better. And lastly, when I talk about the adoption and the maintenance of this whole thing, between ourselves and the National Cybersecurity Alliance, the whole goal here is to leverage the authority and our visibility to get this out there. And we want to focus on things like training and things like expanding this, because we really do want to harness the power of cloud to get this adopted, because we want to globally increase security. That's our entire mission as a nonprofit, is we want to impact security in a positive way. So this should be great. The last things here I'll touch on, again, you saw some of these earlier. I want to bring this back now that we put it in context. enhanced security. We got to protect our employees. We got to protect data. It's a big focus. Businesses can go to business. You saw that in Binil's presentation. It means a lot. When we talk about cost-effective solutions, accessing robust security measures at a lower cost, that is that a situation. You already paid for a subscription. What if you paid a little more versus having to invest into a whole on-prem solution, and you can do everything in the cloud and it's locked down and you're good to go, and you can focus on doing what you do best, which is running your business. And then to look at kind of an amalgamation of the next three: compliance. If you're ever going to get in this space, having it automated is a dream. There are companies out there that help with this type of thing, but this is one scenario where you can focus on this. Second and third, simplified implementation. This is something where our entire goal is to work on creating pathways to help people get into this environment so they can get on there faster and easier and securely. And lastly, we want to just build trust and reputation. I mean, everybody wants to get better and more secure. So why not start now? This is the best place to do it. And this is an exciting way to do it. So that's mostly what I have for everybody today. I'm happy to stay on with Binil and answer as many questions as people like. But the biggest thing here is this QR code goes to a form. If you are interested in being a part of the early use of this program, feel free to take out your phone and scan it. This is not a hack, I promise. My email down there at the bottom, Binil's is available as well. I think I forgot to put that on there. Sorry, Binil. We do have a newsletter if you're interested in being a part of that, so you can get more updates on this. But we are very passionate about this community. We want to help small businesses and to help advance this audience. So yeah, feel free to throw your questions in. And Binil, I don't know if you have any closing statements as well, but would invite any questions from the crowd.